Have you ever noticed this quiet type of confidence? Not the loud kind, not the kind that posts milestones, selfies, or constant updates, but the kind where someone barely exists online and yet seems completely grounded in real life. In a culture where visibility is rewarded, silence feels suspicious, so we assume something must be missing. But psychology suggests the opposite. Today, I want to reframe how we understand people who rarely, or never, post photos on social media. Not from a surface level, their private explanation, but from what it actually reveals about identity, emotional regulation, and self-trust. Because in many cases, not posting isn't avoidance, it's alignment. Let's start with something most people overlook. Modern platforms quietly train us to outsource our sense of self. Likes become feedback, views become validation, engagement becomes proof of relevance. So when someone opts out of that system, it's not accidental. It usually means they've already internalized something others are still chasing. Psychologists call this internal validation, the ability to feel stable without external reinforcement. People with this trait don't need their experiences mirrored back to feel real. Their life doesn't become more meaningful once it's witnessed, and that's rare. This is why many low-posting individuals have a strong identity anchor. They know who they are even when no one is watching. They don't shape themselves based on reactions because their self-concept is already formed. That doesn't mean they're confident in every situation. It means their confidence isn't performative. Now here's where it gets interesting. Research on self-concept clarity shows that people with a clear sense of self feel less pressure to explain themselves. They don't need constant narrative updates to maintain social belonging. In other words, they're not trying to manage perception. They're living. This often makes them appear mysterious or distant online, but grounded in person. They show up fully in real conversations because they're not split between experiencing and documenting. Another layer most people miss is emotional regulation. Posting frequently can sometimes act as a coping mechanism, a way to regulate mood through feedback. When someone feels good only after others respond, their emotional system becomes reactive. But people who post less often rely on slower internal regulation. They process emotions privately. They stabilize themselves without external reassurance. Psychologically, this is linked to secure self-esteem, not inflated, not fragile, but steady. They don't need to prove happiness. They don't need to signal success. They don't need to remind others they're doing well, because their nervous system already knows it. This also explains why many of these individuals are selective with expression. They don't share impulsively. They don't post to fill silence. When they do speak, it usually has weight. That comes from something called an internal locus of evaluation, meaning they measure worth by personal standards, not public reaction. Their thoughts pass through a filter. Does this matter to me? Not, will this perform well? And finally, there's the digital awareness factor. Many low-visibility individuals understand something others sense but can't articulate. Social media is not reality. It's a highlight distortion. They understand comparison doesn't happen evenly. You're measuring your behind the scenes against someone else's edited moment. By staying low-key, they protect themselves from that loop, not because they're weak, but because they're strategic with their mental energy. They choose peace over projection, presence over performance. So the next time you notice someone who doesn't post photos, doesn't announce wins, doesn't narrate their life, don't assume they're disconnected. They might just be deeply connected, internally. They don't need to be visible to feel valid. They don't need an audience to feel real. And that quiet self-trust, that's not invisibility. That's emotional maturity. If you enjoy understanding the psychology beneath everyday behavior, not judging it, but decoding it, this channel is built for that. Because we don't analyze what people show, we explore what it reveals.